Thanks for staying with me. By now, if you've completed the color wheel and blends, you should be nicely warmed up for brushes and strokes. To catch up, we need to mention paper. In watercolor, simple paper is just not practical. It buckles and the water can pool and the weak fibers peel away. Sketchbooks and multimedia pads are barely better. I encourage anyone trying anything new to work hard to experience that thing in the way that made it great. Consider French cooking, knitting with cashmere, Italian wines, watercolor on arches. Let me tell you, the joy is real. If you can't choose arches, at least choose a heavy 140 weight to 300-pound paper. And even so, depending on how wet your chosen technique, you may need to tape your sheet down or use a watercolor block. Watercolor blocks are sealed on all four edges and have a little access point where you can slice away your sheet when you're finished with a palette knife. Not an inch of my arches goes to waste. I make cards, bookmarks, test strips. In the discussion of paint, more is often a lot of fun, but not necessarily better. Potency and light fastness and the way the pigments play nicely together will make your painting a carefree joy. Start with primary mixables in warm and cool hues. It's really all you need. Well, except for a great brush. It's time to get wet and dive into a brush test. Test your own brushes to find out which ones you like. I'll be looking for the ones that hold the biggest load and have the best point and control. The ones that have smooth extremes of thick and thin. The brushes that have bristles that hold together, and whether they're soft and pliable or stiff and good as picker-uppers. And how they're going to deposit pigment. Is it going to be pooled on the ends of a stroke or distributed evenly along? The brushes I'm testing were hanging around in my brush stash. It's always good to know what you've got. There's a student grade brush and one somewhat more expensive, a water brush, a gift brush from a trip my parents took to the Orient when I was in high school, and the one I'm currently using. I began this test with an anemic knowledge of the span of brands of brushes available. I believed I wanted natural hair, but now I feel much more affinity towards natural synthetic blends. On my dream brush wish list is to own a real Kolinsky sable brush. The only one I've ever used came with my Coatman travel set. It was a super brush in a tiny size with a travel cap. Amazing, and I asked a lot of it. I'm ready for more. But now I feel I want to know more about the ethics of using natural hair brushes. This comes at a good time since synthetics have progressed by leaps and bounds over the past 10 years. They perform amazingly well, virtually on par with their natural counterparts. There's a Spanish brush called Escoda. It has both the real Kolinsky sable version, the Reserva, and also the Versatile, which is synthetic sable made from squirrel and synthetic, which might be a perfect blend, having the suppleness as well as the tooth to do some picking up and that kind of work. I have to believe it would behave a lot like this brush that I am currently using. It is both soft and a working brush. I've been pretty happy with it, but it's not a brand I'm even familiar with. And the winner is? Yeah, I haven't really picked one yet, so we'll save that for the next video. In a basic discussion of brushes and strokes, I want to mention some others in your circle of friends beyond your bestie. Flat and brights. Brights are shorter, stiffer. Are great for long, straight edges and great gestural lines by slightly twisting it on edge. Filberts, or cat's tongue, come to a rounded end, making them ideal for petals and curves. This is a favorite of mine. Since they are flat, too, you can still achieve a crisp, thin line. The mop is wonderful for the first part of wet on wet, soaking the paper quickly. This is a slanted brush. This and the dagger brush have an incredible ability to do something very fun with two different colors of paint that resembles rose mauling. I haven't worked with it very much though, but it does look like fun. Here's a little exercise. Take a couple boxes and get them wet, not dripping wet, but nice and saturated. And load up your brush with pigment and work it all the way from left to right, from high intensity pigment to clear. Another exercise is doing a horizontal blending, also wet on wet. So you're wetting the paper completely. Now this would be the classic sunset sky, starting with blue at the top, starting with yellow at the bottom, letting them come together, each meeting at clear. The trick is to not let the blue and yellow meet, because then you'd get green, and that would just not be a sunset.